The movie begins with UFO sightings throughout the world as humans try to figure out what they actually are. There seems to be a divided opinion among the general public and the governments of the world on whether extraterrestrial life exists or not. The scene then shifts to the present day at the Pentagon. The defense team registers an unidentified signal on their radar. Actually, it's an alien spacecraft that crashes near Searchlight, Nevada, 45 miles outside of Las Vegas. Project Moondust, a secret Defense Department unit led by Henry Burke, arrive at the scene of the crash in black helicopters. Next, in Vegas, we meet former mob getaway driver Jack Bruno, who works as a taxicab driver to avoid returning to jail. Soon, he gets two passengers dressed as stormtroopers who irritate him. Back at the crash site, Henry and his men discover a spaceship and set up a perimeter nearby to make sure no one gets near the crash site. Meanwhile, Jack picks up another passenger, Dr. Alex Friedman, a failed astrophysicist who has come to Vegas to speak at a UFO convention at the Planet Hollywood Hotel. Since Jack seems too skeptical about UFOs and alien life in general, she suggests he attend the convention before leaving. However, Jack doesn't seem interested at all and goes back to his flat to sleep off the night. The next day when he wakes up, Jack learns about an apparent chemical accident in Searchlight through the news. Actually, it's the government's cover-up story, so that no one would question their perimeter setup and the crash that occurred the night before. Soon, we see that the Pentagon has fortified the crash site with the army, and there's research equipment. Men in Black seize the spaceship and start searching the crash area. They find two separate footprints depicting two alien life forms who left in a humanoid form. As a result, they initiate the search for the spaceship passengers to capture them and harness their DNA and powers. Meanwhile, Jack is met by two thugs who seek his services for his former mob boss named Andrew Wolf. However, Jack claims that he has already left that life behind and no longer wishes to work for Wolf. When the two of them insist, Jack becomes aggressive and fends them off. Shortly after, Jack finds two teenagers, Sarah and Seth, sitting in his cab unbeknownst to him. He is surprised to see them and asks where they came from. However, the teenagers simply reply that they came inside through the cab's door. They offer $15,000 to drive them to an unknown destination, even though Jack still remains suspicious about them. Meanwhile, Burke's men track down the teenagers, who turn out to be the spaceship's passengers. Burke's team makes it possible through various discoveries, such as stolen clothes, a car being burglarized, a bus leading to Las Vegas, and an ATM deprived of all its contents. Finally, they pinpoint their location in Bruno's taxi. Burke then commands his team to engage in the pursuit of Jack's cab to retrieve the passengers. Back inside the cab, Jack presents his concerns to the teenagers, asking them about their parents. He thinks that they are running away from their homes with a lot of cash. Moments later, Jack and the teenagers realize that they are being pursued by a fleet of black-colored cars. They engage Bruno in a high-speed chase, mistaking the government agents for more mob thugs. He tries to evade them with his driving skills. Despite his best attempts to evade them, Jack fails to speed away. This results in Seth using his ability to vary his molecular density and crash one of the pursuing cars by standing in front of it. At the same time, Sarah uses her telepathic power and telekinesis to help the group escape. However, Jack is still ignorant about the teenagers' true identity, while the government agents think Jack has joined leagues with the aliens. After a while, Jack finally arrives at the destination pointed out by the teenagers. He is surprised to see the barren land with nothing around except for an abandoned house. The duo hand over a load of cash to Jack and quickly get out of the taxi, rushing towards the abandoned house. At first, Jack decides to leave them there and drive back, but his curiosity gets the best of him and he decides to follow them out of concern. Inside the house, Jack finds Seth and Sarah looking for a device using a tracker. The teenagers urge Jack to return back to his vehicle, claiming it's not safe for him, and pass through a secret doorway. Once again, Jack's curiosity gets the best of him, and he follows the teenagers to a hidden underground laboratory. The teenagers then retrieve the device they were looking for within the underground laboratory. Meanwhile, Jack just stands there, asking as many questions as he could, while he still tries to understand everything going on. Suddenly, the three are attacked by the Siphon, a powerful armored alien assassin. Amidst the chaos, Jack makes several attempts to distract the Siphon to assist the teenagers escape. Eventually, the three of them make it back to the top, as Seth is injured in the process. Jack then carries Seth on his shoulders, and the three of them hurry back to his cab. Finally, Jack has had enough of everything that's been going on, and stops the cab to interrogate the teenagers. But before he could ask anything, Siphon arrives behind them in its spaceship, and Jack is forced to drive off roads. Seth and Sarah eventually start revealing about the pursuer and tell him that the Siphon's mission is to kill them. The Siphon pursues the group until its spaceship crashes into a train, and the creature is wounded, as Jack and the kids make a narrow escape. Meanwhile, the government agents learn about Jack's history of crime records. While he was an associate of Wolf's, they also track his last known location on the railway tracks, where the cab almost crashed into a train. Back at the cab, the teenagers finally agree to reveal their truth to Jack. As expected, Jack doesn't believe a word they utter and thinks it's all nuisance. However, as Sarah uses her telepathic powers to float objects in the air, Jack finally starts to believe them. After Seth and Sarah prove their otherworldly biology to Bruno, the three settle at a diner to calm their nerves. Also, Jack pays a mechanic a huge load of money to repair his wrecked cab while he talks with the teenagers about their next trip. However, we see that Jack and the teenagers are tracked by Henry and his team. Moments later, Jack receives a call from Henry while Sarah and Seth sit back, enjoying their food. Over the phone, Henry offers Jack to hand over the kids peacefully, and in exchange, he will clear all of his criminal records. Tempted by the offer, Jack agrees to do so, but gives the condition that the kids won't be harmed. Later, Jack notices Henry's team hoarding inside the diner carrying guns. He reports it to the local town sheriff, who interrupts Henry and his team for bringing firearms inside the diner. This eventually leads them to have a gun standoff, while a waitress helps Jack and the kids up to the floor. Soon, Henry and his team learn about Jack's escape as the trio once again find themselves inside the cab, speeding away. On the way, Sarah even allows a dog named Junkyard to join them in their adventure, even though Jack hates it. Next, Jack asks for a plan, and Seth says they need their own spaceship to return back to their planet and save ours. For this reason, they have to return to Henry's team, but Jack strongly suggests against it, as they will get in danger. Eventually, Jack remembers Dr. Alex Friedman and the UFO convention and decides to take the kids to meet her to get some help. Next, we see Dr. Alex presenting a seminar in front of a rather ignorant audience who are too dumb to understand her. Soon, Jack, Seth, and Sarah arrive there and begin unfolding their narrative for the last few days. Despite initially dismissing Bruno's story, she believes him after Seth and Sarah show off their powers and narrate their current situation. After that, Seth and Sarah start revealing about their planet and their past. They are aliens from a dying planet located 3,000 light years from Earth and are able to travel by using wormholes on their spaceships. They further reveal that their planet is dying and their government is planning to take over Earth as their new home. The government on Seth and Sarah's home planet intends to invade Earth, despite the majority of the race being fully opposed to the plan, so that their kind may survive. Seth and Sarah's parents are scientists who sought a way to save their planet without invasion, but were arrested before completing their experiment. The teenagers came to retrieve these successful results, but the alien government, who still has its sights on invading Earth, sent the Siphon to stop them. To save both worlds, they must retrieve their spaceship and return home with the results. In order to prevent the invasion from happening, Friedman then realizes that the teenagers are what she's been searching for and joins the group. They meet fellow ufologist and conspiracy theorist Dr. Donald Harlan, who tells them that the spaceship was taken to the secret US government base named Witch Mountain. However, he informs them that the place is heavily fortified and suggests not going there. Nevertheless, they decide to visit the site to help the teenagers. But before that, Jack is frisked by Wolf's men, while Dr. Friedman goes away to retrieve her equipment. Jack somehow manages to rescue himself from the thugs and starts searching for Seth and Sarah. Meanwhile, we see Burke and his men arrive at the scene, looking for the alien teenagers. Also, the alien assassin, Siphon, has arrived there as well, looking for the teenagers. Luckily, Sarah uses her telepathic powers to aid their escape in Jack's cab, and the pursuit once again begins on road. After a brief chase, it seems that the group has finally been caught by the government. Actually, it's Harlan and his men who distract the soldiers with Bruno's taxi, while the others escape to Witch Mountain in Harlan's RV after evading the Siphon. After driving for a while, the group arrives outside the base and begins their hike to the top. Unfortunately, they are captured by Burke and his soldiers, as Friedman pleads to let them go. He then orders that the teenagers be prepared for vivisection, but Burke frees the adults, as he doesn't think anyone will believe them. As Jack and Friedman are escorted back to the civilian area, they manage to take control of the transport vehicle and make their way to save Seth and Sarah. Next, we see Burke ordering his men to initiate the vivisection procedure, even though the teenagers are heavily sedated. One of his men tries to oppose him, but Burke manages to convince him otherwise and orders them to start the procedure. Meanwhile, Jack and Friedman enter through a tunnel to get back in the base. Inside the tunnel, the two barely escape an exhaust flame and carefully make their way past the guards patrolling the area. Later, the Siphon attacks Witch Mountain and engages the soldiers, allowing Bruno and Friedman to infiltrate the base and free the teenagers. Meanwhile, Burke's soldiers are busy fighting off the Siphon, as Burke suspects something is wrong in the lab. When he arrives at the laboratory, his worst fears come true as he finds Seth and Sarah missing. Next, with the help of Friedman's cunning, they manage to launch the ship and escape through the mountain's tunnels. Just as they think all their problems are gone for good, the Siphon reappears as he had stowed away on the spaceship. However, Jack manages to kill it off after a brief struggle, and the four of them hurry to their rendezvous. The teenagers then give Bruno and Friedman a tracking device that will allow the aliens to always find them. Finally, they tearfully wish them farewell, but not before Sarah gives her telepathic powers to Bruno. Some weeks later, Bruno and Friedman become successful authors of a book named Race to Witch Mountain, a true story. They promote their book and knowledge on the UFO convention circuit, explaining that the publicity protects them from government reprisal. As they leave the convention, the alien device activates, implying that the alien teenagers may be returning to Earth.